Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, get ready for more pain at the pump. Gas prices hit yet another record high.
I honestly don't look anymore. I don't have a choice. I have to get to work.
What's driving the pain at the pump, and is there any relief in sight? As the war in Ukraine rages on, the big question is, would Vladimir Putin actually use nuclear weapons?
Russia holds advantage in tactical nukes, 1 to 10 ratio. We have 200, the Russians have 2,000.
Other experts questioning what would happen if Putin did make that move. Kirk Cameron once thought homeschoolers were a little strange, but then he learned differently.
And I thought homeschooling was like you had to be a Quaker or you had to be Amish. I was saying, I mean, does my wife need to wear a floor-length denim jumper, have a head covering? And, where do we get the uniform? And then I realized that I was just out of touch with this incredible, robust community of people.
Now Cameron is warning about the dangers of public schools and investigating the benefits of homeschooling. And a prophetic word of encouragement from a pastor who says an unprecedented shaking is happening in the nations around the world. All those stories and more today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And we begin at the gas pump, where there's no let-up in the inflation nation. With gas prices setting another record high today, the national average is up another nickel from just yesterday, getting closer and closer to $5. A target that it could soon hit. So is there any relief in sight? CBN's Jenna Browder is on this.
It's hard with these gas prices just going up. It's ridiculous.
Drivers from coast to coast feeling the record high prices at the pump.
I honestly don't look anymore. I don't have a choice. I have to get to work.
The national average now at $4.92 a gallon, according to AAA. That's up a nickel from yesterday, more than a quarter from 1 week ago, and nearly $2 from 1 year ago. And many predict it could reach $5 by the end of this week, if not sooner.
It really does limit the amount of extra driving that I do.
Numerous factors are pushing prices up, according to AAA, including the war in Ukraine, the supply chain crisis, increased demand, and less production from U.S. companies concerned about the Biden administration's policies toward fossil fuels and focus on green policies. So is there any relief in sight? It doesn't appear so, according to analyst Patrick DeHaan of Gas Buddy, as gas prices hit new highs in the Midwest.
Gasoline inventories in the Great Lakes are at their lowest seasonal level on record, amidst still strong demand in light of high prices and low supply.
DeHaan says the upcoming hurricane season will be key. Any hit to Gulf Coast or East Coast refineries could send prices even higher.
You know, I'm traveling to see family, so you got to do what you got to do. The other thing is I have a car that only takes premium gas, so it is what it is.
As many look to Washington, the pressure is on the White House. Since President Biden took office, the national average has more than doubled. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
The price pressures on oil and gas prices from the war in Ukraine do not look to be ending anytime soon, as Russia is pushing ahead. And now another danger, as Vladimir Putin threatens to expand his list of targets if the United States sends Ukrainians long-range missiles. Russian nuclear forces have reportedly been holding drills near Moscow. That's ignited fears Putin might follow through on a previous threat to use nuclear weapons. Del Hurd takes a look at this nightmare scenario.
This is a simulation of a full-scale nuclear war between Russia and NATO. Casualties mount at a rate of 10 million people per hour.
4 hours. 5 hours.
A Princeton University simulation estimated more than 90 million immediate casualties. Some studies have placed total casualties in the hundreds of millions. Then there would be a nuclear winter for weeks or months or even years, when clouds of soot block sunlight, creating sub-freezing temperatures, which along with high radiation levels would lead to even more deaths. What was once unthinkable is now regularly debated on Russian state TV, using nuclear weapons against Ukraine, NATO, or even against U.S. territory. This Russian parliament member says it would only take 4 nuclear missiles to destroy both coasts of the United States. This journalist says if Russia loses in Ukraine, a nuclear strike seems probable. But is this just theater intended to scare the West?
Would Vladimir Putin actually resort to nuclear weapons? Experts disagree. But what is disturbing is that some think he would.
Rebecca Koffler, born in the Soviet Union and a former intelligence official for the U.S. government, is the author of Putin's Playbook. She says Vladimir Putin would absolutely use a nuclear weapon.
This type of conflict is exactly the type of situation for which Putin, on his orders, the so-called nuclear warfare doctrine was developed that was called escalate to de-escalate. You're escalating by popping a nuke in a conventional conflict, in this case of Ukraine, in order to de-escalate the conflict. And if Russian intelligence services assess accurately or by mistake that the US and NATO are about to intervene, Putin preemptively would activate that doctrine.
Koffler says Putin believes he has the upper hand because of his large arsenal of small tactical nuclear weapons, intended to destroy battlefield targets rather than whole regions.
Russia holds advantage in tactical nukes, 1-to-10 ratio. We have 200, the Russians have 2,000.
Some have speculated that if Putin orders a nuclear strike, his staff might disobey the order, triggering a coup. Koffler says that won't happen.
This is such a Western and American style thinking. Nobody is going to refuse Putin's orders. We're talking about the person who has authorized multiple assassinations.
While some experts say that Putin would never risk a nuclear war that could also destroy Russia, others warn that with Vladimir Putin, nothing can be ruled out. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Turning now to Israel, the country's coalition government could be in danger of falling after it failed to pass a critical vote on the legal status of Israeli settlement communities in the West Bank, Biblical Judea and Samaria. The vote did not immediately topple the government of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, but it fuels speculation the fragile alliance is too weak to survive much longer. Bennett's governing coalition is made up of 8 ideologically different parties, from the political right, left, center, and for the first time, an Arab Islamist party. The Likud party of former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu immediately called on Bennett to resign after the failed vote. Here at home, a number of Tampa Bay Rays players decided not to wear rainbow-colored logos on their uniforms as part of the baseball team's annual LGBTQ Pride Night Saturday because of their Christian faith. The Rays officials wanted full participation from the team, but gave the players a choice to opt in and wear a rainbow-colored logo added to the TB on their ball caps and a sunburst on the right sleeve of their game jerseys. But some players refused to wear the LGBTQ+ logos. Pitcher Jason Adams was chosen by team officials to speak for the players who opted out. He told the Tampa Bay Times, "A lot of it comes down to faith, to like a faith-based decision. So it's a hard decision because ultimately we all said what we want is them to know that all are welcomed and loved here. But when we put it on our bodies, I think a lot of guys decided that it's just a lifestyle that maybe not that they look down on or anybody or think differently. It's just that maybe we don't want to encourage it if we believe Jesus, who's encouraged us to live a lifestyle that would abstain from that behavior. Just like Jesus encourages me as a heterosexual male to abstain from sex outside of the confines of marriage. It's no different." In Washington Monday, the Postal Service unveiling an upcoming new stamp. The service revealed the artwork of a commemorative forever stamp to celebrate the centennial of the birth of former First Lady Nancy Reagan. And First Lady Jill Biden spoke of Nancy Reagan's time in the White House.
First Lady Nancy Reagan served the American people with grace. She understood that the role of First Lady came with inherent pitfalls and scrutiny. Yet she found the humanity in it all. She traveled the country listening to Americans' stories and just brought them home to her husband.
Coming up, Kirk Cameron is making sure no child is left behind. He pulls back the curtain on the dangers of public schools and reveals a better way to educate children. Get a glimpse of his new documentary called The Homeschool Awakening. We've got the story for you right after this. Across the nation, parents are investigating the benefits of homeschooling their children like never before. Actor and family advocate Kirk Cameron explores this subject in his new documentary, The Homeschool Awakening. Cameron admits he once thought homeschoolers were a little strange. Wendy Griffith explains what he discovered instead.
I always viewed homeschooling as somewhat of a cult.
Quiet, reclusive.
The different people.
Abnormal in some way.
I could never picture myself doing it.
Oh no, those are weird. I'm not doing that.
Like these parents, Kirk Cameron admits he also once had a healthy fear of homeschooling.
And I thought homeschooling was like you had to be a Quaker or you had to be Amish. I was saying, I mean, does my wife need to wear a floor-length denim jumper, have a head covering? And, where do we get the uniform? And then I realized that I was just out of touch with this incredible, robust community of people. There are experts and educational professionals creating curriculums that actually incorporate faith. What I'm learning is that parents are not stuck in a system that they're not happy with.
Today, 6 children later, all of whom were homeschooled at one time or another, Cameron says parents are waking up and holding the public school system more accountable.
And if you look at the public education system, removing prayer from schools, removing God and the Bible from school, and replacing those things with progressive ideas like the critical race theory, gender queer theory, and teaching children to decide whether or not they prefer to be a boy or a girl, to choose their own pronouns, and separating parents from their children's understanding of sexuality and when and how they're exposed to explicit material.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
I don't really understand this idea that parents should decide what's being taught.
Give me a break.
In his new documentary, The Homeschool Awakening, Cameron credits the pandemic as a catalyst for this closer look at what kids were being taught.
And they're saying, you know what? The public school system has broken trust with us as parents. These kids are precious. God's given them to us, and we need to do better for them. And so millions are now successfully homeschooling their kids or taking them to private schools that can actually pass on their values, not undermine them.
What are some of your favorite interviews in the movie?
We document about 17 different families from rural backgrounds, from urban backgrounds, families that are entrepreneurs who have businesses, who are traveling around the country. And you find kids are getting their pilot's license at 17 years old. Kids are opening up restaurants and have baking businesses. Kids are learning outside with the entire world as their classroom, together with their siblings and with their parents and with their grandparents.
Cameron adds perhaps the best part of homeschooling is God gets to stay in the classroom.
The 10 Commandments.
The 10 Commandments, that's right.
We want our children to understand who they are, who God is, their place in the world, why they're here. These are questions that can only be answered when you are free to pass your faith to your children and to teach your children to see the world through the lens that God's given us. And so if you're a person of faith, you want people to understand history through the lens that recognizes the positive, life-giving principles of the faith that we've been given from our parents and our grandparents. Many parents are being told that has no place in the education of their children at their school.
Kirk, is homeschooling just for Christians?
No, not at all. I would say that if you look at the statistics, it is not just Christians who are homeschooling their kids. There's people from all different faith backgrounds or no faith background at all. They're just looking for a better educational opportunity for their children. And when you think about it, the difference between one-on-one education or one-on-two or three or four or five is a completely different situation than one teacher and 30 kids in a classroom. And we're finding out that colleges are actually preferring kids who are homeschooled well because they're out-of-the-box thinkers, they're initiative takers, they're kids who are strong and well-rounded socially.
Kirk, what do you hope audiences will take away from seeing this film?
If you are just interested in a different option than what you currently are stuck with regard to educating your kids, check out The Homeschool Awakening, because it's going to give you a lot of hope. And it's not just me saying this. We have over a dozen families who are going to walk you through their journey, and you're going to see in full color how these families are not just surviving, but thriving.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
The Homeschool Awakening is in theaters next Monday and Tuesday. That's June 13th and 14th. To find out how you can get tickets, simply go to cbnnews.com. Still ahead, a Justice Department investigation reveals the shameful treatment of Native American students in hundreds of schools in the federal Indian boarding school system. We're going to bring you the details right after this. More information is coming out about a troubled chapter in U.S. history. The Department of the Interior released Volume 1 of an investigation into federal Indian boarding school policies. Mark Martin has more on a story CBN News continues to follow, including one initial finding that hundreds of Indian children died throughout the boarding school system.
In the investigation covering 150 years, the Interior found systemic abuse of Native American students across the more than 400 federal schools that made up the federal Indian boarding school system. Much of this abuse happening in an effort to force students to assimilate. Native children who broke the rules faced strict punishment, including solitary confinement, flogging, withholding food, whipping, slapping, and cuffing. Blackfeet Nation member Wes Bremner attended a Montana boarding school in the 60s. He says physical abuse started on day one when a staff member punched him.
He thumped me right between the eyes and almost knocked me out, and I went against the wall. I was kind of wobbly on my feet, and he said, "Now you go to bed." And it was about this time of day. And when asked if he was ever sexually abused at boarding school, he had this to say. "If I was, I would take it to my grave."
And why is that again?
It's the past. It's not something you would it's nobody's business.
In addition, the report says, based on the investigation's initial analysis, approximately 19 federal Indian boarding schools accounted for over 500 American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian child deaths.
A lot of them died. Some of them probably died from broken hearts, and a lot of them just died from being in close contact with disease that they couldn't get rid of because everybody was crammed in together.
The Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs says that the assimilation of Indian children was intentional and part of that broader goal to expand the U.S. And the Interior Department anticipates the number of recorded deaths will increase. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Coming up, a pastor offers a prophetic word of encouragement for these difficult and stressful times. We'll bring you what he has to say when we come back. Please stay with us. A Minneapolis pastor says an unprecedented shaking is happening in nations around the world. Pastor Joshua Giles writes about it in his new book, Prophetic Forecast: Insights for Navigating the Future to Align with Heaven's Agenda. He spoke with Charlene Aaron and Wendy Griffith on CBN's The Prayer Link about his book and the hope that we should have in the midst of turmoil.
When we came into this pandemic, the Lord spoke to me and said that we were going to see a technology resurgence in the world, that after this period of decline, we were going to see new innovation rise. And I believe that the church can be at the forefront of that. And so I would encourage everyone watching to just avail yourself, open yourself up to the Holy Spirit. Many of you get ideas, you get inventions, you get dreams that come to you. And sometimes those things come, but we don't move out on them. And then, 3-5 years later, you look up and see your idea on television. And so I'm encouraging believers to get active, because Jeremiah 29:11 says this. He says, "I know the plans I have for you." In one translation, it says, "I know the thoughts I think toward you. That I think the key there is that God is thinking thoughts, not just about you, but he's literally thinking thoughts toward you, meaning he's sending thoughts from heaven to your mind. And so ideas, innovation, strategies can literally come in the form of what I call a God thought that just comes into your mind. And if you take that thought and write it down, incubate it, and then put legs to it, I believe that you're going to see that manifest in your life, and you're going to see it impact the lives of others. So I'll encourage you, just be open to whatever the Holy Spirit wants to share with you, because he speaks in so many different ways. And as you are open to his voice, he's going to lead and guide you.
And you can see the entire interview on the prayer link this evening at 6:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. You can also find it on the CBN News app. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. I have a message I'd love for you to post, tag, tweet, and share with others. A surprise to you is not a surprise to God. It is a well-anticipated opportunity for him to move and do what he does best: take care of you. That's a promise he is guaranteed to keep. The only two things God is not able to do are lie and fail. You can bank on it. With that word, I encourage you to make today a terrific Tuesday and do it on purpose and with purpose. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We would love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us. That address is right there at the bottom of your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Please be sure that you have a terrific Tuesday and join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.